What is Al-Aqsa? It's a holy place in Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Third holiest place in Islam. Why would Hamas have to name an operation Al-Aqsa flood? Or could it be because the Israelis had for the past months, years, been desecrating the third holiest shrine in Islam? Could it be that the Israelis were disrupting Islamic worshippers? Throwing tear gas into a mosque? Beating up women? Bullying men? Maybe that's why it happened. Maybe the Palestinians were tired of being surrounded by a fence and surrounded. You know, there's a lot of people don't know this. They're like, Gaza isn't occupied. Really? What is the CLA? What is Kogat? These are two Israeli entities that control everything that happens inside Gaza. Nothing goes into Gaza unless it's approved by the CLA or Kogat. That means that you have to submit paperwork that gets approved by the Israelis, and the Israelis deny everything because they're in control. Nothing happens in Gaza unless the Israelis deem it fit to happen. That is the definition of occupation. And you ask, why did they do it on October 7th? Now, I'm an American. I come from a tradition that says, you oppress me, I take you out and declare my independence. We did it to the British tyranny. We beat the crown. They called us terrorists. Some of us were. Samuel Adams, a documented terrorist. You know, Paul Revere could be accused of a terrorist. Now, these are great patriots in the American mind because we believe that we were right. The British believe we were wrong. We beat the British. We got our independence. How is Palestine going to get their independence? Who's going to give it to them? No one. We know that. On October 6th, no one was talking about a genuine two-state solution. It was done, finished. Goodbye, des vidania. The Saudi Arabians were talking about normalizing relations with the Israelis. They had forgotten about their precondition, about the necessity of a Palestinian state existing. Oh, we'll talk about it. No one's going to talk about it. Because once you normalize relations, it all becomes about the money, the money, the money. Everybody's focused on the India, Middle East economic corridor, going from Mumbai through Dubai up through, Saudi Arabia onto Jordan to Israel, Haifa onto Greece. That was it. Joe Biden made it the signature element of his G20 summit. Netanyahu stopped talking about the Iranian bomb in the United Nations long enough to brag about this, and Israel's rolling it. No one was talking about a Palestinian state. No one cared about the Palestinians. Definitely not the president of the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas, one of the most corrupt men in the world. And Fatah, what have they become? They become a mafia group that basically steals money meant to benefit the Palestinian people, puts it in their own pocket, builds villa after villa after villa after villa. The Palestinian people had been forgotten. Only one entity was speaking out for them. One. And it wasn't Hezbollah, and it wasn't Iran. They give words, they give words, they give words. Only one. Hamas. Hamas launched an attack against Israel on October 7th. Because if they had failed to do so, there would never be a Palestinian state. Regardless of what you think about what Hamas did on October 7th, you must acknowledge the following. Everybody's talking about a Palestinian state now. Everybody's saying that this has to be part of the political solution. That's a huge victory for the Palestinian people, which means it's a huge victory for Hamas. You call Hamas a terrorist organization, but you ignore the fact that Israel encouraged Hamas to make the transition from being purely a resistance group into being a political party capable of governance. Israel helped fund Hamas's politicization. Hamas won an election in 2006. People tend to forget that. They won a democratic election. They won more votes than Fatah. They controlled the legislature. Now, that was an outcome that Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, couldn't accept. Israel didn't want to accept. My God, they wanted democracy, but not that kind of democracy. No, we don't want democracy where the will of the people is manifested. We want democracy that we control the outcome, but they didn't control that outcome, and it led to a civil war where Hamas won control over Fatah in the Gaza Strip. They lost control in the West Bank, but they won control in Gaza. Therefore, they are responsible for the governance of Gaza. Now, if you're put in charge of governing people, what kind of government are you if you allow the perpetration of crimes, the crimes of occupation? Because again, Scott, the settlements were withdrawn in 2005. The settlements were, but Israeli control was not. Israel controlled everything. Ask Hamas if they were able, as the governing authority, to build a true port capable of receiving international shipments. No, Israel wouldn't allow it. Israel wouldn't allow it. Ask Hamas if they could build an airport where planes could land so that Palestinians could fly freely around the world as sovereign citizens. No, Israel wouldn't allow it. Ask Hamas if they could do anything without Israel's approval. And the answer is only one thing: resist. And that's what a legitimate governing authority does when their people are being subjected to the oppression of the occupier. And that's Israel, an occupying authority. So Hamas struck out. Scott, Hamas committed crimes. Really? You guys do know, all the people that say that, and that in 2004, the International Court of Justice, which is sort of the body for the United Nations, for the global community to make final judgments about opinions regarding international law, determined that Israel was an occupying power and the Palestinians were an occupied people. And you do know, therefore, according to this 2004 opinion, that Israel has no inherent right of self-defense. The occupier can never, ever, under any circumstance, cite self-defense against actions that are derived from the occupied responding to the occupier. So, yeah, no, Hamas struck out as they should. And I'm telling everybody here, if you're a man or a woman worthy of the name, and you were a Palestinian living in Gaza, if you weren't with Hamas on October 7th, you stand for nothing. Nothing. Because it means you don't want a homeland. It means you want to live in perpetual slavery, perpetual serfdom. No, free men and free women would have supported Hamas on that day. And they should still support Hamas to this day, because Hamas is struggling against an illegitimate occupying authority, a war criminal nation. Never forget that Israel is not a nation of innocents. These are people who elected a government that has said, we will not allow a Palestinian state. You do know